Hey everyone, welcome back to the JavaScript course. So in this video, we'll be exploring about the promise combinators inside of JavaScript. And if you find this interesting, let's get started right away. So in this video, we'll be exploring about the promise combinators inside of JavaScript. So inside my VS Code, I opened up my index.html file, my style.css file as well as my script.js file. So there is some basic boilerplate code present inside my index file as you can see. And there is some basic styling given to the style.css file over here like this, and there is some basic console.log message inside my script file. Okay, so now let's start exploring about the promise combinators inside of JavaScript. So in the previous videos, we had defined certain functions, that is basically different callbacks, and we had implemented them using the promise chaining method. So in this video, we'll be exploring about basically the promise combinators, that is the different kinds of promise combinators that are present, and we'll be taking many examples with each one of the promise combinator. Okay, so this first step is to, let's say, we initialize our function callbacks that are present. Okay, so again we'll be making use of the four methods that we used in the previous video. So we're gonna say function sum. Okay, so basically this is gonna take in, let's say, some arguments x comma y, and it's gonna return a new promise inside of it. Okay, that's gonna take, of course, the resolved and reject. Okay, so we're basically gonna resolve over here, and we are gonna return whatever the sum value is. Okay, so the sum is, and we're gonna return it, that is x plus y, like this. Okay, so similarly, let us write the other functions, that is, one is for multiply of x comma y. Okay, so we're gonna say return new promise of, this is gonna take in basically the resolve and then reject. Okay, and then after that, over here also will be basically resolving this promise by typing in the, by accessing the result over here, that is the multiplication of two values. So multiply, so the multiplied value is, it's pretty much gonna be x star y. Come on. Okay, so this is it about the multiplication function. So let's write the next one, that is basically the divide function. So we're gonna say function divide of, it's gonna take in x comma y as params, and we're gonna return a new promise altogether again, and which is gonna take in our resolve and reject. Okay, and basically we're just gonna resolve this also. Okay, the divided value is basically x by y. Okay, so let's pretty much write our final one, that is function subtract of x comma y. Let's basically return a new promise like this, which is gonna take in again the resolve and reject. And over here basically let's resolve this promise again. Okay, so the subtracted value is gonna be x minus y. Okay, so basically we have initialized all the function callbacks that are required. So the next thing we'll be doing is we'll be learning about the promise combinators. Okay, combinators, let's write that correctly in JavaScript. Okay, so the first one is promise dot all. Okay, come on, let's write that correctly. Okay, it's gonna be promise dot all, Okay, so what are first of all promise combinators? So basically the promise combinators are used to execute more than one promise inside of JavaScript. So for that reason we'll be implementing that. And the first one we have is the promise.all. So what is promise.all? So this is the first combinator that we have, and this combinator basically gives us a array that is full that is basically it gives us a array of results that is filled with promise, that is all the fulfilled promises inside an array. Okay, so basically let's say we have over here four promises that we need to fulfill. Okay, and basically we have everywhere resolve. So if you make use of promise.all, so basically we are gonna get an array of fulfilled promises inside our, let's say, a console. Okay, because we have just made all of them as resolve. Okay, so let's say if even one of the promise gets rejected, then this promise.all is going to reject all of them. Okay, so this is used to return array of basically fulfilled promises. Okay, we can say like that, like this, and it rejects. Okay, and it rejects basically even if any one of them fails. Okay, so this was it about the first one. So the second one we have is basically promise.raise. Okay, so this promise.raise combinator is going to return us the first fulfilled promise or the first rejected promise. Okay, that's what this is going to do. So this is used to return the first fulfilled promise, okay, or the first rejected promise, like this. Okay, so after that we have our third promise, that is basically our promise dot all settled. Okay, so we're gonna write that over here. So promise dot all settled. Okay, so again this promise.all settle is going to return us a bunch of fulfilled promises as well as rejected promises inside an array. Okay, so this is basically similar to promise.all, whereas in promise.all we had something like this, that is it's only going to return us array of fulfilled promises and not the rejected ones. Okay, whereas in promise.all settle basically it's going to return a bunch array which is going to contain basically fulfilled promises as well as the rejected promises. Okay, so this is going to return an array fulfilled and rejected promises, like this. Okay, so that's it about the third one, that is promises.all settled. So the final one is what? Okay, so it's going to be, I think, yeah, promise.any. So let's write that. So promise.any method is basically it's going to return the first fulfilled promise and it is going to ignore the rejected promise. Okay, so it's only going to return the first fulfilled promise, and it is, yeah, it's going to return whatever the ignored promises that are present in our code, right? So this is used to return the first fulfilled promise and it ignores basically the rejected ones, right? Yeah, so hopefully we have written all of them. So now let's start executing it. Okay, so let's make use of basically our first one, that is promise.all, like this. So this is going to take in an array of promises. Okay, so pretty much let's start calling our functions, right? So the first one we have is sum, so we're going to say sum. Let's pass the parameters, that is 10, 20. Okay, let's apply the comma, and then we have is multiply as such, like this. We're going to say 10, 20 again. Okay, so after multiply we have is divide basically. So let's give 20 and 10 over here so that we get the correct result. So let's remove the semicolon and apply the comma. And finally we have our subtract, like this. We're going to again provide 20, 10. Okay, so after this we have is basically after all the promises are executed, so we'll be making use of the then method, and then we'll be accessing the result from it. Okay, so we're gonna say result console.log of result like this, and pretty much save the file. Okay, so basically we are actually resolving each and every promise over here, as you can see. So we should get an array of 4. Okay, and we should be seeing all of our promises being fulfilled. So let's come back to our console over here. Yeah, so there you go. Inside a console we can see all of them being resolved, and you can see the result of each one of them, right? Yeah, so that's it about the first one, that is the promise dot all. So now we'll be looking into the promise dot race. Okay, so we're going to say promise dot race. So again, let's call in our functions right over here. It's gonna be multiply of again 10 comma 20. Okay, and divide of 20 comma 10. Okay, let's remove this piece, and we have finally the subtract method, right? Subtract of 10 comma 20, I mean 20 comma 10. Okay, so after this we have is of course the dot then method. It's going to take in the result, and basically it's going to console.log our result. So we're going to say console.log of result like this. Okay, so basically promise.race is used to return the first fulfilled promise or the first rejected promise. Okay, so let's pretty much comment out this part for now. So for the promise.race method, so it's going to return the first fulfilled promise. So it's going to be sum because it has been fulfilled. So you should be seeing only the sum result coming, that is the sum is pretty much 30. So let's save the file. Let's come back to our console once. Yeah, so there you go, we are getting the sum is 30 inside the console. Okay, so let's say you reject the sum. Okay, instead of resolving over here, we're going to say reject. Okay, and save the file. So let's come back to our console. Yeah, so it is going to return the first rejected promise or the first fulfilled promise. So over here instead, so we have just rejected over here, that is for the first function, as you can see. So that reason it's going to reject that, and we are able to see the result over here, which says the sum is 30. Okay, so that's the way basically the promise dot race method works. So now we'll be moving on to the next one. Okay, so that's going to be promise dot all settled. So we're going to say promise dot all settled. So it's basically going to take in let's say sum of 10 comma 20, and then multiply of 10 comma 20. Okay, and then we have is basically what was it, divide, right? So divide of 20 comma 10, and we have subtract of 20 comma 10. Okay, so after this we're gonna say dot then of result. After all this has been executed, we're gonna access the result in our console. We're gonna say console.log of the result value. Okay, so as you already saw, promise.allSettled is going to return an array of fulfilled promises as well as rejected promises. Okay, so now let's also reject the third one, that is divide. So instead of resolving over here, we're going to say reject. So promise.allSettled method is going to return all of these promises, okay, in the form of fulfilled or in the form of rejected. Okay, because it's going to take in both of them. So let's save the file, and let's come back to our console over here. Okay, yeah, so there you go, we are getting four methods, I mean 4 values inside of our array. So the first one is rejected, the sum is 30. So this is the reason, that is the sum is 30. Okay, because we have passed rejected over here. The second is fulfilled, so the value is going to be the multiplied value is that value 200, 10 into 20. And the third one is rejected, so this is basically for the divide function that we wrote, and this is the reason for that. And the fourth one is again fulfilled. Okay, so this promise dot all settled is going to return, of course, both the fulfilled as well as rejected promises that we have inside of our promises array, right? So the next thing is basically we'll be moving on to the next one, that is promise dot any. Okay, so let's write over here, we're going to say promise dot any, and basically let's write in our array. It's gonna have a sum of, let's say, 10 comma 20, like this. Okay, and basically after this we have is multiply, right? So let's write that multiply of 10 comma 20, and we have divide of 20 comma 10. Okay, and we have subtract, okay, of 20 comma 10, like this. Okay, so after this we have is, that is after the execution part, we will be using the .then method, and then we'll be accessing our result inside our console. So we're going to say console dot log of result. Okay, so basically the promise.any is used to return only the first fulfilled promise, and it ignores the rejected ones. Okay, that's what its definition says. So over here inside our functions we have basically first one as reject and second one as resolve. So it should pretty much give only this value, that is the multiplied value should be, let's say, 200 over here, and it is going to ignore all the rejected ones. Okay, so it's going to give us this as the output, right? So let's save the file and check out our result in the console. So let's save it and come back over here. Yeah, so as you can see the multiplied value is 200 because that is the first resolved promise inside of our functions that is present. Okay, so let's say I just resolve this one, that is a sum. Okay, and let's come back to a console. So you should be seeing the first resolved promise and rest of them are going to get ignored, right? So over here, yeah, you can see the sum is 30. Okay, so let's say I reject each one of them except the last one. So reject, this is already reject, and resolve. Okay, so you should get the subtracted value, it should be 10. Okay, yeah, so that's how this works. So if you provide everything as reject, I think it's going to give us an error because it needs at least one method that is successfully fulfilled, that is any one of the promise should be successfully fulfilled. Okay, so these are some of the combinators inside of promise combinators inside of JavaScript. Okay, so we explored about basically 4 promise combinators. Just to give a quick recap, that is the promise.all. So basically the promise combinators is used to execute more than one promises if we want to, and the promise.all combinator is used to return an array of fulfilled promises and not rejected promises. So in case there is any one of a rejected promises inside of promise.all, then it is going to get rejected, that is the entire promise.all is going to get rejected. Okay, so the next thing we explored about is basically the promise.raise method. Okay, so inside that it's basically used to return the first fulfilled promise or the first rejected promise. Okay, so and we took the example of this one as well. Okay, and the third one we went and explored about is basically the promise.all settled. Okay, so this promise.all settled is similar to promise.all method because this is going to return an array of fulfilled as well as rejected promises, except with one difference, that is it's going to return even the rejected promises, whereas in promise.all it's only going to return an array of fulfilled promises, and if there is any rejected ones, it's going to reject the entire promise.all method. So these are the some of the basic difference. Whereas promise.any, the final promise combinator, so that is similar to the second one, that is promise.raise, and promise.any is basically used to return the first fulfilled promise and it ignores the rejected ones. Okay, so whereas in the second case, that is promise.raise, what is going to happen is it's going to return only the first fulfilled promise. It's going to return the first fulfilled or the first one that is rejected. Okay, so that's the basic difference between promise.raise and promise.any. Basically these two are similar, 1 and 3 and 2 and 4 are similar. Okay, so you can check out the code and then you can write your own functions and try out different examples and explore a lot more about these promise combinators. Okay, so I think that's it about this video. Okay, so let's see you in the next video, and then thank you for watching.